Senator Desani, for what purpose do you rise?
Present file item 52, which is AGR 1.
Is there any objection to taking up this measure out of order? Seeing none, Mr. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Joint Resolution 1 by Assemblymember Gatto relative to the Federal Constitutional Convention.
Thank you, Mr. President. AGR 1 begins the process to amend the United States Constitution to nullify the Supreme Court's decision in Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission. AGR 1 submits California's application to Congress to call for an Article 5 convention for the sole purpose of proposing a constitutional amendment that, number one, limits corporate personhood for purposes of campaign finance and political speech, and number two, declares that money does not constitute speech and may be legislatively limited. In Citizens United, a deeply divided Supreme Court on a 5-4 vote held that corporations are due the same free speech rights enjoyed by natural persons. The decision spawned super PACs, which have flooded unlimited corporate money into federal elections under the notion that corporations are people too. AGR 1 empowers the people of our state and legislatures who follow us to address constitutional issues provided by the U.S. Constitution, issues that Congress is either unwilling or unable to address. Members, voters are clearly fed up, and polling shows this, with the notion that money is speech and that big money can drown out the speech of average Americans. It's time that we amend the U.S. Constitution to make the important distinction that a corporation is not entitled to the same rights as a natural person. There is no opposition to this item, and I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Desani. Senator Leno, followed by Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of this measure and want to underscore some of the comments that Senator Desani has made. Many people reacted in dismay with the Supreme Court decision that ruled that corporations are people. But specifically relative to elections, we know that corporations do not and cannot vote. So if we're to be consistent in that ruling, should corporations vote? I would also ask, should corporations pay the same tax rates that you and I pay as individuals if in fact they are people? But of course they're not. But the core of the concern here is fair and just elections, the very foundation stone of our democracy. And when Senator Saulnier said that the voters are fed up, I think we recognize that. There can be many assessments, clearly. I'm not here to say I know the definitive answer, but certainly among those reasons that we are seeing ever record lower percentages of voters coming out to vote with each successive election is they do not feel as if their vote matters, that the system is not quite what it should be, that a small, relatively small handful of very wealthy people, of billionaires, who can flood the election process, the airways, newspaper advertisements, television advertisements with their message, that our voice just doesn't matter because it can't be heard. And if the only voice heard is the one with the most money, what's become of our democracy? So this is a very reasonable measure to let the people decide. And to let the people decide, we need to vote aye on this measure to move it forward so the debate can continue and so that people without those very deep, deep pockets can have a say in an attempt to reclaim our democracy and their vote. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Leno. Further debate or discussion, Senator Jackson, followed by Senator Corbett.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Members, I also want to stand in support of this measure and adopt those, I think, articulate comments and thank particularly the young people who have taken the lead in this effort, because they recognize that the future of democracy, that their futures, that the future of this nation, the principles upon which we have operated as a society and as a democracy, are very much at risk as a result of this decision. Money is not speech. Corporations are not people. And up until the Supreme Court decision that flipped that on its head, that was the standard in the United States of America. And that is the standard that should exist, because frankly, in talking to a number of constitutional scholars, they will all tell you the same thing. This is one of the worst decisions that the Supreme Court of the United States has ever rendered. It is one of the most insidious decisions in terms of protecting and preserving democracy, because it does, again, say that corporations, which, by the way, are creations of the state. You know, there's a reason that corporations have to be submitted to the secretaries of state and approved. And originally, when our country was founded, corporations had a finite lifespan of no more than 7 years, because our founding fathers recognized how insidious these institutions could become if they were enabled to have indefinite lifetimes. Now they're people. But the fact of the matter is, unlike people, corporations can't go to jail. They don't have any criminal liability as a result of that behavior. They can be sued. Individuals can perhaps be personally named, but the corporations go on and exist irrespective of their conduct. This is not what democracy was intended to do. And the young people who have stepped up to the plate here are the ones that are saying, we want to take our democracy back. And every single one of us in this room understands that in today's world, money has taken over as far too important a product in the whole democratic process. It's time that we reclaim democracy for the people, for the integrity of the future of democratic nations, and particularly our own, and take heed to what these primarily young people are demanding of us, that we give the people a chance to have their voice heard, and their voices will definitely be clear that corporations are not people, and that money should not be and should no longer be considered speech. I urge your aye vote on this measure.
Thank you, Senator Jackson. Senator Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. President. My colleagues have already spoken to this issue, but we do have a crisis in this country, and it's a crisis of trust. So many people feel that their elected representatives are not listening to their concerns, don't care what they have to say. And it's starting to impact so many things. It impacts the number of people who actually take the time to go out and vote. In the last elections recently in my area, 25% of the people who are registered to vote in Alameda County came out to vote. That is an abysmal number. And why is that, members? Because people feel that their activity in this democracy doesn't make a difference. Members, I rise in strong support of this measure, particularly because at the hearing, the Judiciary Committee hearing just last week, hundreds of people came to speak in support of this measure. People who had never been to the Capitol before, people who had never thought to come testify in support of a measure. And why is that? Because they believe this will give us an opportunity to make a change, to be able to get control back of our democracy and give them an opportunity to make a difference so that our democracy will work going forward. Members, I urge your strong support of this measure.
Thank you, Senator Corbett. Further debate or discussion on this item? Further debate or discussion? Seeing none, Senator DeSania, you may close.
Thank you, members, and thank you for all of your thoughts. Members, the courts have said that the primary function of a corporation is to maximize a return on investment from the investor, from the shareholder. And that has worked well in many ways in respect to the free market. A lot of us think it's become a little bit too much. And we all know the influence of money in this building and in our careers, and that money comes from many sources. But our job is to vote on all of our constituents, our overall needs, not just a corporation and not just any particular individual group. What this attempts to do is to restore what this country is about, When Lincoln said this was a country by, of, and for, he said of the people, not of corporations. In this instance, I think it's really important that California become the second state that sends a message to Washington that we think the Supreme Court made a mistake, and we intend to change that mistake. I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Anderson. No. Bell. Aye. Berryhill. No. Block. Canella. Corbett. Aye. Correa. Aye. De Leon. DeSaulnier. Aye. Evans. Aye. Fuller. No. Gaines. No. Galgiani. Aye. Hancock. Aye. Hernandez. Aye. Hill. Aye. Hueso. Huff. No. Jackson. Aye. Knight. No. Lara. Aye. Leno. Aye. Ted Lieu. Aye. Carol Lieu. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Monning. Aye. Morrell. No. Nielsen. No. Padilla. Aye. Pavley. Aye. Roth. Aye. Steinberg. Torres. Steinberg. Aye. Torres. Aye. Vidak. No. Walters. No. Wolk. Aye. Wyland. Wyland. No.
Please call the absent members.
Block. Canella. De Leon. Aye. Hueso.
Ayes 23, noes 11. That resolution is adopted. Colleagues, returning to